Anybody that's new to booths and Comic Cons, just just kind of embrace the fear just for a little bit, and I guarantee you, as soon as people start coming by your booth, it'll boost you up big time. Like for me, I'm still friends with a lot of people I traded art with too. That's one thing I didn't expect, is that the second day of the con and everybody's kind of winding down, it sort of turns into a rendezvous where you can barter and trade your art for other good art. Um,
Hey, I'm Nick Armstrong, and this is the Fort Collins Comic-Con podcast. Each episode, we get to talk to a cool creator or creative in our community. And today we get to talk with the fabulous Preston Gillis, and he's going to tell us all about his amazing art. Preston, introduce yourself, please.
Well, hi, I'm Preston Gillis. I just want to say thanks for having me, Nick. I'm really excited to be here. I really don't get too many opportunities to talk about my art, so thanks for giving me a bit of a platform for that. I guess I can start kind of at the beginning. I've always had a passion for modeling and painting stuff. When I was a kid, the first time I saw painted models was at Marshacks in the 90s. They were playing Warhammer and they had painted models. And Nick, that was like an event in my life. I saw those and I'm like, those are painted by a person and this is a game. I was hooked instantly. So I tried to get my hand on any kind of models I could back then. Really all I could find back then in LaPorte was Dale Earnhardt models. I'm not a big NASCAR fan, but I had a little bit of fun with those. I had some black paint and some enamel. And enamel, if you don't know, cleans up with like mineral spirits and stuff. And at the time I was in 5th grade, I had no idea about that. So my brush quickly turned in from a brush to a dried up stick with paint on it. And I've kind of always just had a passion for it. It's something that just gives me a break from the world, a break from work and being a dad and a husband, where I can just get in my space and just create. I love to paint models. I love building terrain too. I've built a bunch of 40K terrain, like Warhammer 40K terrain. I'm making a bunch of Battletech terrain that I'm really excited to use and play with.
I'm a big fan of Battletech as well, and that's where I learned my modeling chops. I would kit bash. I would take pieces from one model and put them into another model, and a lot of my friends were into that same thing as well. So we sort of learned from each other. Where do you find that you draw your inspiration from, or where do you find your techniques from?
Well, it's kind of a mix. When I first started painting, the internet was not a thing. So, I mean, any kind of painting club, I was part of the Front Range Wargamer community, and I learned a little bit there. But for me, the best resource is YouTube. There's so many awesome creators that have so much to share and just good tips and inspiration. Um, and I love a good audiobook while I'm painting. I usually times I listen to some kind of horror or true crime or something like that. But for me, it's all kind of about the process. You know, you get your models, you cut them off the sprue and glue them together. You scrape your seams and wash off anything else. Then you go ahead and give them a prime. I've just started doing Zenthal priming like I started that last August. And that has been one of the biggest things to improve my painting, because I felt like I kind of hit a plateau and I just wasn't improving like I had hoped I would. And just switching over to the Zenthal priming just made things so much more fun. It kind of gave me, I call it like lines for a coloring book, because that way it shows you where your bright paints have to be and where your darker colors can be. I did mostly like edge highlighting and dry brushing. So just now getting into blending has been great, and I'm loving the results. I'm not sure if I can show you one how it'll look on the camera, but
Yeah, let's see one. Yeah, we'd love to see it. Wow. And that's a Mad Cat Mark II, right?
It totally is, Nick. And I'm not great at painting clans. I just tell everybody everything I paint is a mercenary, because I really just go for nice paint jobs. I know there's army specs where you can find the perfect color scheme for your model, and I kind of just let the colors talk to me. What am I excited to use? What colors are pretty?
That's exactly how I paint mine too. I never really went after any particular, house or division or anything else like that. There are folks who are very dedicated to all of that. And I saw some nice shadowing on your model there as well. So that's truly fantastic work. What are you showing off at Fort Collins Comic-Con this year? What can we look forward to?
You are going to see a ton of beautifully painted mechs. So a lot of Battletech stuff. I have a few 40K armies that I'm really just looking to unload for a crazy deal. I used to play, but I'm kind of out of the hobby, and that's one of those things where if you're going to build the army, you got to know your codex, you got to know what equipment your guys are going to have. And honestly, I just don't play that anymore, and I don't really have the passion to produce a ton of great models. So I will have a few for I'm talking crazy prices for this stuff. I really got a shop that I need to clean out. So I'll have a bunch of chaos like bits and parts, a bunch of Blood Angel stuff, Imperial Guard army with a ton of tanks, ton of infantry, a Space Wolves army with a ton of transports and Blood Claws, a bunch of bikers and stuff like that. So that stuff's kind of looking for a new home. Same thing with my BattleTech stuff. I'm really excited to roll out the hex terrain that I've been building for BattleTech, because what I'm doing is I'm taking terrain features that are on the BattleTech maps and just making those actual hex maps that go up. And for me, it just makes the game so much more fun, Nick. It feels like when you have a lot of terrain on the map, sometimes that can kind of create a barrier to the fun.
Yeah.
And it makes the map just not fun to engage in. But when you have awesome terrain, it just has people buy in so quickly. I managed to hook one of my friends from work into BattleTech too. So now every Tuesday we have BattleTech Tuesday, and that's just been a boot. And he asked me to teach him how to paint, which was just so flattering, humbling, and super exciting too. So I had like my first like protege or apprentice, which has been awesome.
Great way to share the love of your craft too. I mean, just bringing your friends into the game, teaching them to play. Then they want to make their own models. They want to make their own mercenary group. That's BattleTech in a nutshell for me. That's how I got into it. It was high school.
And Nick, the app makes it so accessible for new players. I wish they would have had that back in the 80s when I started playing. And it's just good to see BattleTech come back with such a ferocity. Back when I was a kid, it wasn't so available everywhere. I mean, but now you can get lances and medals pretty much anywhere you want, really.
Yeah, and they're making new models. We might actually have a presenter this year at Comic-Con, Devin Ramsey, who's creating a new module for BattleTech in particular. So,
oh, great. Do you like to play Alpha Strike or like the advanced rules?
I have not played much lately, no. And
okay.
It's, my experience is limited to a bunch of my friends in high school, just, going crazy with the rules as much as we could and trying not to, make missile boats or whatever else. So it's such a fun thing, tabletop gaming and miniatures in particular. And when they're not people, are so difficult to really transform into life, and especially terrain. So what is your secret to bringing out that story with the terrain, with miniatures that are not people?
So one thing that I love about this hobby, Nick, it's kind of unique to this hobby, but whatever you paint, that's not just going to be a source of pride and joy for the painter, but all your friends that come to play get to have joy when they play with these beautifully painted miniatures. And that can also act as another hook to get your friends in there and get them engaged. So it's not like you're just painting to a vacuum just to put them back in the box and never see them. It's so great to roll them out and people are like, you're so big and they're so small. How did you paint that? But with my terrain, I'm kind of always trying to develop, use new media, learn new techniques. I'm an art teacher by trade, so I'm pretty versed in different media. A lot of my terrain has traditionally been just foam core and a little bit of clay work, but I got my hands on a hot wire table that is a game changer. So I've really been doing a lot of stuff with XPS foam this summer, making like buildings and stuff for BattleTech, just like little skyscrapers and things like that.
Wow.
That would be like a level 3 terrain piece. And for these, I was kind of going for like a synthwave, sort of a Blade Runner kind of a look.
Yeah.
And these were super easy. They're some of the first things I built with my my hot foam tool. But let me grab some clay terrain that I really, really love. I'm really excited about. Just take 1 second.
Yeah, let's see it.
So these are a combination of just some clay, some air dry clay, and a few bits. And I put Horsetooth Rock right there. But this is just a small fuel depot.
Yeah. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, you definitely need to go to YouTube or Spotify and check out the video version, because this is truly spectacular handiwork here. This is when we say these are works of art, we're not joking.
Oh, Nick, it just makes my day. You're too nice. But I have the skill of underestimating myself really like all the time. But I had my buddy was like, these look like they came right out of a box.
Yeah. And
there's no 3D printed. I just use plastic card, model barrels from like train models or wherever I can find them. And those all have a hex footprint, so they'll fit beautifully on a hex map. But if you wanted to use them to play Alpha Strike, they'd work fine for that too. So I'm really excited to roll some of that stuff out. If I could just say one thing to anybody thinking about doing a booth or even just going to a Comic-Con, Comic Cons have been the most positive experience for my art I've ever had, because you'll have 2 days of people just coming up to you and telling you, oh, this is great, how did you make that? And it's a great experience. It feels validating. It feels like you're not like a phony anymore. I had never felt so much positivity ever, and it has just been such a big boost. I've been looking forward to coming back, because I was at the first Comic Con, but then the year after that, I started my first full-time teaching job, and I didn't really have a lot of time to get stuff ready, and I wanted to be able to focus on that a lot. So now it's nice to have a little bit of time just to work at my craft, and this has been something I've been wanting to do since I've been in college. And every summer is kind of my busy season when I have a little time off to do some painting and network with people and stuff like that.
Or in that real world getting in the way of all the fun stuff like art and creation.
And I'm a new dad too. My lovely daughter, my 2 months old. And I love her, and she's great. She's the best thing I've ever created. But she takes a little bit of time out of my day, which I don't mind. But sometimes you feel like nothing gets done, and all you do is spin your wheels a little bit.
A little bit more chaotic than air dry clay, I would assume too, right?
Absolutely, Nick. But it's the hardest but the best thing I've done so far. So Charlotte will be at our Comic Con too. If you want to see the world's cutest baby, come to my booth.
And in full cosplay, I'm sure.
We've been thinking about it. I think I would make a really good Kingpin, but we got to figure out something for Charlotte. I'm not sure what we're going to do with her yet. Maybe Grogu would be good.
Yeah, babies are tough with cosplay. I mean, they're so fussy about things. They don't like having things there. My son did a Transformer. He was full on Transformer. I built the cardboard box for him and 3D printed.
Super cool.
Yeah, he could transform by getting down and like putting the box together. It was neat.
That is so cool, Nick. And somebody told me that nerds make the best parents, and I think it's so true.
Yeah, and it's about the creativity. I think everybody really loves leaning in and letting the kids sort of shine in their own way, and it's a heartening thing, especially for us used to Comic Cons. I mean, we're used to interacting with other geeks and really, the infinite diversity and infinite combinations type idea, where everybody's contributions make the whole greater.
It's a great tribe to be a part of, Nick. It's almost like an expanded D&D party where everybody's kind of on the same page. Some people can be a little reluctant to come out of their shells like me, but I think it's a great time to be a modeler and to be a fan of tabletop gaming. I just can't wait to share my hobby with my daughter. I mean, when I was younger, my dad liked to work on cars, and that really wasn't my thing. So I hope she likes painting models, because she might be doing quite a bit of that, or even just making any kind of art, really.
Well, and it's applicable skills. I mean, figuring out how to create something, make it marketable for others, and even just enjoyable for yourself, and sticking to something as intrinsically detailed as a model, and seeing the final results. They're varied from the initial creation. It's an amazing thing.
It is. And being an artist and a parent is a different thing. In years past, I could have the whole day to myself. I could work 12 hours and get a lot done. Now it's kind of in 2 or 3 hour little bursts when I can. And it's tough because my daughter's only going to be a baby once, but I still want to have a good booth at Comic Con. So I do a little bit of painting with her in here when I can, and just love on her a bunch.
Man, we've tapped on a lot of topics today. We've talked about imposter syndrome. We've talked about parenting and art and all the guilt that comes along with doing something well and doing it really well and wanting to spend time with your kids too. But a good episode of that as well is listen to a former episode of Fort Collins Comic Con podcast with Mariah Hummer. She talks about creating comics with a baby in tow, and it's a struggle for real.
It is. But I think guilt is the big theme for the summer, and my wife's been amazing about it. She knows this has been a dream of mine for years, and she could not be more supportive. She just helped me get into the Zoom meeting. I tell everybody she's the brains of the operation. I just do what she tells me.
Supportive partners is where it's all at.
Anybody that's new to booths and Comic Cons, just kind of embrace the fear just for a little bit. And I guarantee as soon as people start coming by your booth, it'll boost you up big time. Like for me, I'm still friends with a lot of people I traded art with too. That's one thing I didn't expect, is that the second day of the con, when everybody's kind of winding down, it sort of turns into a rendezvous where you can barter and trade your art for other good art. I couldn't say enough good stuff about it. I'm so glad we're back in person too. It's not really the same when it's digital.
Yeah, Yeah, that's the big struggle that we were dealing with. Everybody loved the science content, but they missed the artists. And it was really tricky trying to figure out ways to support the artists. And so we're glad that everybody's back in person now.
And me too. And I'm looking forward. I teach middle school like wood shop, and I'm really looking forward to maybe putting some hot wire tools in my classroom, maybe leaning to a little bit of scale modeling. I know it might sound trivial, but I've switched everything in my workshop over to metric, and it has made things a million times easier just to scale things down. If you just have measurements that are metric, it's ridiculously easy to scale those down to the right scale. And I think that I can kind of create or catch some future modelers just by showing them what it's like, giving them a chance to put the tools in their hands and let them create something that's important to them.
So beyond switching to metric, what other advice or tips for young creators do you have?
Go for it. Shoot your shot. That's kind of what I tell myself. Like, this is the time where I can show my stuff off. Don't be afraid to believe in yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but we kind of live in a world where people aren't the greatest with their emotions or just don't know what to do with them. So focus on your art. You'll make relationships easier than you think. And it's not going to be like people will come to your house with pitchforks and torches and tell you to give up your brushes because you can't make good art. And you miss all the shots you don't take. And don't compare your work with other people's work. Compare it to yourself and where you started at. It's a journey. And as soon as you tell yourself I'm good and I don't need to keep practicing, that's when you sort of start sliding back and starting to get a little bit lazy. And if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
This is all wonderful bits of advice. Preston, where can we find more about you and your art?
I have a pretty active Facebook page. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And my email's on there too. It's just preston.gillis777@gmail.com. Free quotes and estimates for any kind of projects. I'm looking to have on my Facebook right now, it's mostly 2D art, a lot of watercolor stuff. I don't think there's going to be too much of that at Comic-Con. I'm just in the process of finishing up stuff and getting it put on my Facebook. So my Facebook's probably the most active place to find my stuff at. Or just shoot me an email and I can do free estimates or quotes for any kind of projects you're thinking about.
That's wonderful. Well, Preston, thank you so much for joining us today. And for more great interviews like this one, visit FortCollinsComicCon.com and check out our podcast on Spotify or wherever you like to get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to the Fort Collins Comic Con podcast. Be sure to visit us at FoCoComicCon.com for more chats with local creators and creatives.